If I say the name Cleopatra to you, what image comes to your mind? Usually it's the image of beauty or sensuality. Maybe it's the image of sexuality, because the image we have of her is this powerful woman who seduced two of Rome's most powerful men, Mark Antony and Julius Caesar. What we know less about her is that this rumored or famed beauty that we so have in our mind about her may not actually be true. You see, we have two ways that we understand Cleopatra and two mindsets or myths that have been handed to us about her. And they come from two places. One is we had that beautiful Hollywood film with Elizabeth Taylor, who was so beautiful and iconic as Cleopatra. And then we also had the Roman propaganda writings that came out about Cleopatra in her own lifetime. They sought to do two things. And, propaganda isn't anything new. It's used to either vilify somebody, say who's bad, or deify someone and say who's good. And that's what they did with Cleopatra. It was a propaganda scenario. Paint her as a seductress who was both beautiful and ruthless. But as I said, that her rumored beauty may not even be true. We don't really actually know what she looked like. And in terms of who she was as a leader, or in terms of who she was as a woman, well, that story we don't even know. We don't know much about her. In fact, if we open up a space today and created a space for her to tell her story, it would probably be very different. What's less commonly known, though, is that there were actually several female rulers in Egypt's history named Cleopatra. And each one of them were authentic and powerful in their own right. Much like someone that I'm going to tell you about now, whose name's a bit of a mouthful, Hatshepsut. So some of you may know her or may not know her, but in terms of beauty, well, there was nothing to recommend her. In fact, when they found her, it was an obese mummy with some missing tooth, with a little bit of a missing tooth, and she used to wear a fake beard and male clothing. So we had no beauty to recommend her. In terms of sexual scandals, well, there aren't any. But in terms of being the longest reigning female pharaoh in ancient Egypt, that she was. She reigned over a time period called a golden age, an age where her nation prospered. She had religious piety. She was incredibly religious and spiritual. She pioneered architectural buildings and designs that were never seen before. She did things that other people wanted to do before her. And yet, we don't remember her name. Because the woman that we remember, Cleopatra, we hold up and judge her life and remember her by the two same things that we judge common 21st century women by. How beautiful we are, how sensual or sexy we can be. You see, Hatshepsut, who was this amazing powerhouse of a woman, her legacy is still around for us today. We know what she looked like. In fact, there's a temple dedicated to her, her life and her death in the sand dunes of Egypt. And over 28 museums globally have something about Hatshepsut. In fact, if you go to New York City, which maybe you've been to, you will find an entire wing dedicated to her and who she really was. I can't help but feel that Hatshepsut herself tells us all we need to know about history. History itself is full of blank pages when it comes to women's contribution and representation. And the reason I say Hatshepsut teaches me what that means is because she herself, during her reign of 30 years, wore that male beard, dressed like a man, and used a male term of pharaoh to be taken seriously in a male-dominated society that so characterized her life. In 2016, the US journal Slate magazine did a survey. They took 614 books, history books, that were published in the US in 2015. The survey was done in order to know who writes history, what does history get written about, or who, in fact, does history get written about. Of those 614 books, it shocked me to find that 75.8% of those books were written by men. 21% of those books, which is roughly close to 120 books, were biographies. But it also shocked me again to realize that close to 100 of those biographies were written about men. In other words, the scenario remains that if you take a casual stroll to your local bookshop and you walk down the history aisle, or in our case, it's called the African section, you will find books on war, male presidents, and those are the kind of stories we are still reading. Yes, Nelson Mandela and Jan Smuts have a place within our narrative as a nation. But by focusing on one side of the story, not only for our nation, but for humankind in general, we are missing half of the story. It is as though we have bought this cinema ticket to a film that we've longed to see, and yet we leave the cinema halfway through the film, and our understanding is incomplete, and it's narrow. Michael Crichton said, "The purpose of history is to explain the present, to say why the world is the way that it is." The profundity of that statement hits me every single time I read it, because if he is saying that the purpose of history is to tell us why the world is the way it is, then history, as it's been written, curated, told, preserved, and retold, has a problem. 13 months ago, history was fragmented, or it was broken, the way that it has been written. 13 months ago, something happened in our narrative as a humankind. Something happened because women began to tell the truth about their stories. 13 months ago, thousands of women collectively across the globe said, "Me too." And it changed the understanding of our lives as women. Our stories were intense, and our experiences were even more so. But it allowed a space, a global space, for women to tell their stories. If we continue to do history the way that we are doing history now, and only focusing on women's stories who are both beautiful and sensual and so filled with this sexuality that we imagine, then we are telling one side of our narrative. We are missing the point of our stories. If we do not tell the stories of our inventors, our female inventors, the world's first computer programmer was a female. We owe our technology to her, but yet do we even celebrate her story or contribution? If we cannot tell the stories of our women, our astronauts, our inventors, our queens, our leaders, our survivors, our Nobel Peace Prize winner this year was a survivor of intense brutality. And she told her story, and it's changed so many lives. Those are the stories that we need to hear and tell. In this world right now, we have 1.1 billion little girls alive, below the ages of 17. In that number is my niece and my goddaughter. And I wonder if you can think about your own children. Or maybe you teach children. What will our girls, over 1 billion of them, hear when we tell them our story? What will they read when they read or pick up a history book? Whose story will they be taught to honor, cherish, and respect? And how will they see themselves represented? The late educator and researcher Myra Satka said that when a girl picks up a book and reads a womanless history, she learns that she is worth less. She is worth less. Because history has this beautiful way of forming identity within us. It's why we continue to have a debate on whether history should be compulsory or not, because it forms our identity and it teaches encouragement. We as women are fighting for a place in the story, the place that we deserve, the place that we should be given. Because history, the way it is being told right now, is further confirming what women have fought for the longest time, a place at the table. And we deserve to take the place at that table as humankind. I want to ask the audience in this room to do something for me, and I hope that you're able to do this. I want to ask if you can access a memory within you. A memory that says, hey, I was however old, and I found a woman in the pages of a history book or a storybook that I could connect with. I certainly hope that that memory exists for you. If not, I'll tell you when it happened for me. I was 14 years old, and I was in English class, and I picked up a book. Never before, up until that point of being 14 years old, had I ever encountered a woman on the pages of a book that stirred me to that extent. I found in the pages of this book a woman that was both spiritual faithful, but she also led an army, and she was a warrior. She did things that people feared to do, and she was killed for it. But suddenly something inside of me made sense. I knew that I could be both faithful and activist, that I could be both spiritual and warrior, a picture that we never put together. Joan of Arc did that for me. She taught me I could be more than what I ever dreamed or imagined. It was the same here, that exact same here, that I told my mom, one day I will build a safe house for victims of abuse. Because I can't help but feel that Joan of Arc did that for me. She taught me something about my identity. That's what story does. That's what history does. What story are we painting right now if we are continuing to tell the stories of men, of a male-dominated society? And that's not against men, because we all need a place in the narrative. It's to say, how can we do this together? It has become incredibly common for us to say, whenever we speak against the discrimination of women or the trafficking of women, or whenever people want to stick up for women's rights or they want to do something for women, it has become so common for us to say, let us do this because she is someone's aunt, she is someone's mother, she is someone's sister, someone's grandmother, someone's woman. But I'm saying that history as we do it needs to change. The way that we are telling women's stories has to change. Not because she is somebody's wife, mother, sister, but because she is somebody, period. Thank you.